Greetings, everybody. This is Professor Hussain here with ASC 2320, Aviation Law and Regulations. Welcome to my class here. We are on Chapter 2, FAA Enforcement. We'll just go briefly over this chapter with regards to what is it entails for FAA and how do they enforce their regulations in the aviation community with regards to whether it's pilots training, whether it's pilot itself, whether it's regulations regarding flying, whether it's regulation concerning airports, certification, whether it's security, as to a certain extent, obviously, because after 9/11 now, security is totally under TSA, but there's some aspects of regulatory oversight by FAA as well. FAA employs obviously thousands of people to enforce FARs, which is Federal Aviation Regulations. What division does FAA do these inspectors fall under? There's Flight Standards District's Office. You'll hear this acronym FSD or FISDO. And most FAA law enforcement activities are characterized as administrative rather than criminal. So this is important for us to understand that most of the enforcements carried out by FAA and the FAA is more likely administrative than being policing the pilots or aviation community. FAA doesn't is not required to advise of your legal rights. Do you still have them? Yes, you do. That's always the case. When FAA has a reason to believe that FAR has been violated, what are the some legal avenues that can pursue against alleged offender? This could be anything from buzzing the beaches where you're not supposed to be below 500. I think below 500 feet above crowded areas. You'll be breaking FAR. So administrative, they can take administrative dispositions, suspension, revocation, civil fines. Administrative dispositions are found on page 34 of the textbook. And for minor offenses, there's two forms that may occur. First is warning notice. So this FAA states violation may be occurred, but they were not pursuing it. There are lot of little warning tickets from police officers that, unlike the police officers, you don't actually pay the tickets. Letter of correction, meaning, as long as you understand the violation and you're willing to correct yourself, FAA will look the other way. Within the letter of correction, remedial training may be offered in place of punishment. The flight has not been compensation for hire. You have a constructive attitude. Your violation was not caused by basic lack of understanding. You don't have any prior offenses. It was not deliberate. If offered, you accept the remedial training, and and you go from there. So most of the time, as long as you admit there's a mistake, and what it means is there's a mistake you committed, and you're willing to correct yourself. That's basically what it is. Remedial training does not result in FAR violation going on your record. Any letter of correction left in your permanent? No, they are pulled in 2 years. Does it require retesting? No, it does not. No, nothing of that sort. As long as you're being honest with FAA, they're willing to accept that, and they will let you go. Okay, so certificate action is what does FAA typically utilize action when the act is operational one instead of record keeping. This may the form of suspension or revocation. Who does duration of decides duration of suspension? FAA attorney handling the case will advise FISDO inspectors handling the case also utilizes table of sanction guidelines. They have a certain guideline uh, set forth by FAA, and they follow that. And most of these is available on their website as well. Very basic actions. FAA enforcement factors are considered by attorney in setting up the duration of suspension, which is found on page 2042. And they also follow the precedent, meaning harsh penalties. Where you think harsh penalties, meaning you violated FARs with regards to communication, maybe with regards to altitude, with regards to not what you call following FAA towers advices, those type as well. And then you can also look at TFR, which is temporary flight restriction violation, runway incursions, and we all know runway incursions are pretty serious. It's a $10,000 fine if it's uh, according to rules. Obviously, they're not going to ask you for $10,000, but that's to show you that is FAA does take incursions very seriously. Individual consideration that's covered extensively in on page 43 of the textbook. FAA attorney subjective gut feeling about seriousness of violation plays a role in selection of penalties. Now, this type of thing, horror stories, what it means is it is best left to FAA to judge your situation. And as long as, for the most part, from my experience, as long as you're honest and straightforward and have no records, they nothing to be scared of. And most of the time, we as it's human nature when we see attorneys getting involved, we tend to be more on the defensive. Attorneys typically have no experience as pilots and is swayed by inspector and media. That means if there is a violation, most of the time it's best to have an attorney who has some sort of aviation background so that he understands what the seriousness of the violation is. Civil penalties, FAA option of imposing fine instead of taking certificate action against an individual in some cases. Citizens who do not have a certificate pilot of ultralight or civil penalties against companies, airlines, certification action against individuals who hold the certificate. That means most of the time you'll see fines being imposed on airlines rather than individual pilots in general aviation sense. What is the typical amount an individual business or others entity that falsifies records is fined? 10, 1,000, 250,000. That's page 24. This is a serious violation where there's falsifying records is serious. So you need to read page 44 of the textbook and see exactly what it entails. FAR 91.13, careless or reckless operation, check on page 44. So if there's a carelessness implying, and obviously then you have no business in aviation. That's what the basic baseline is. Can FAA seize your aircraft? Of course they can. For what reason? If you or your company and believe you may not pay. Seizure in this case, if it's drugs involved, is any other activities, illegal activities involved using the aircraft in question, they have the legal right to seize that aircraft. Why does FAA require re-examination? What is your competencies in question? What happens if you do not submit to re-exam within a reasonable amount of time? Can suspend or revoke your certificate. All FAA is trying to do is try to fix the issue and to find out what the competency or lack thereof is so that you do not commit that mistake again. That's the whole idea. And obviously, safety is priority number one, even for FAA. So we need to take that seriously. Can FAA require you submit re-examination certification against you for same offense or this double jeopardy? Double jeopardy means try twice for same offense, prohibited by Seventh Amendment of U.S. Constitution. So Constitution is comes above any other laws. So uh, therefore, double jeopardy is never considered. When more violations or decoys discovered by FAA, obviously anytime, whether it's FAA or even the cops, if there's prior history, the repercussions can be really serious. So FISDO finds out more daily activities on the beat. Second, ATC, High Quality Assurance Program. What is the third group that reports violation? General aviation. So this on page 46 to 48 gives you some examples of what how FAA can discover certain issues. And obviously, if you're flying, FAA, we call ATC is a prime example of tracking you down, not tracking you down in a sense, but they know exactly while you're flying, while you're communicating with them, they understand your background as well. So if there's violation, they can also report you back to the FAA. Curriculum element, curriculum moment for you in certain events that lead to certificate action. First, contact with FAA representative. Admission that made will be used against offender, which is on page 41. If you admit FAA that you are flying in a certain area, they may use your admission to prosecute for FAR violations. And then comes the Miranda warning, which is you have the right to remain silent. Course held that you do not have to read your rights. Because FAA case is made administrative, you have the rights, but they're not going to tell you that. And that means it's best for you to understand the FARs, know your rights, know when to keep quiet, and only talk when there's an attorney present. When an unknown individual wants to talk to you about a flight, there is anything that should indicate to you should be cautious. When you want to discuss history, you should get concerned. Individual may be inspector who's trying to gather information. So best way in the real sense is if you think it's an inspector and there's something going on, and you think that you might have violated something and you're not sure, you need to just wait and have your Miranda rights spoken. I mean, talk to them about it and say, yes, I'm going to wait till I have my attorney present so that I can explain exactly what happened. Under Part 6151, you're required to present your pilot certificate. Now, this is as long as you know it's an FAA inspector, you're required under this regulation to give them your pilot certificate and your logbook and medical certificate as well to FAA and TSP if it's an accident and state or local law enforcement. Under Part 121, 135, the requirements are substantially different. Under Part 91, you're required to let an inspector board your aircraft. No, under good policy is not to allow him to board if you get an oral request. That's the best way to do it. So, in a nutshell, you're supposed to know your regulation and know your rights as a pilot. And somebody approaches you with these questions, know and act accordingly with your interest in mind. Letter of investigation is explained very well on page 60, and no aviation calls a lawyer will call LOI the invitation to hang yourself. That is, a letter of investigation. Better have an attorney present before you really accept any of the things mentioned in the investigation. Obviously, when it comes to interpretation of safety, it's best to read and be able to understand FARs and closely so that you know exactly what your rights are as far as a aviator goes. As an employee of air carrier, you exercise your air carrier reporting and corrective programs, which is explained very well on page 69. Immunity from sanction. Is there any way to avoid FAA prosecution when you as a pilot have violated an FAR? Yes, NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting Program. What is the purpose of this program? To identify the problem in the national air transportation system. You must file a form within 10 days after the accident. Your violation must not be deliberate. Number two, be a crime. Show that you have a basic lack of a qualification or competency, or accidents are not covered. Remember, every flight crew personnel should file the form. That is, remember this form, and it has to be filed within 10 days. FAA finds a violation if calls for suspension or revocation. They will issue a notice of proposed certificate action. They will come with an offer for informal conference. In an informal conference, this is for you to just tell them your side. FAA attorney, obviously, if you have an attorney, they may be able to reduce your penalty. And also, question comes up whether FAA can use your admission against you if a settlement is not reached. No, unless you change your story. Appealing this decision, your attorney must file with NTSB 20 days, so they always make sure your address is up to date with FAA, or you choose your right to appeal. The filing will defer the date until after appeal process. FAA and five will file their order with broad board as a complaint. Your attorney will also have a list which allegations are admitting to and which ones you are denying, known as answers. What is the term discovery referring to when opposing a legal team lists who they will call on and during the hearing? So you want to make sure that you know exactly who's coming for the hearing beforehand. NTSB hearing, that's in case there's an accident. NTSB case is heard by NTSB administrator's law judge. They are much like a civil trial. Witnesses will be present and attorney will be there to question you. This is the only time in the appeal process you'll find that you and FAA will be able to orally state your case. You will not have a trial by jury. FAA does not have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, only the preponderance of evidence, that is 50.1%. The judge will decide the case when there will be an oral decision. NTSB said that they can accept FAA's interpretation of FARs even if interpretation is first announced at the hearing. What is this called? It's called due deference. Appeal to NTSB, attorney will file written legal briefs. Board will consider two questions: what they are going to look for is a fair hearing, and did the judge apply the correct laws correctly to the facts that they were proven. After that, you can go to U.S. Appeals Court for appeal, paper appeal, written briefs. There's probably end of a road for your appeal process. Can U.S. Supreme Court, but unlikely you will be selected. I will not consider any certificate. Emergency case FAA does order this when they believe they're allowing you to continue to operate is dangerous. In case of operationally, they have found you negligent. And because you were not able to allow due process this process much faster than a regular appeal. How does it typically take to go through the appeal process? 2 years. What does FAA issue an emergency order? 60 days. Appealing under the Hoover Bill, 48 hours from receipt to request review by NTSB, and board has 5 days to make this determination. After suspension, it will be returned at the end of the suspension date. Revocation can be permanent. That's the difference between suspension and revocation. It requires you wait a year before reapplying for the certificate. FAR requires you to be a good moral character. If falsification was involved, you can probably look for a new profession. So that's me. There is no other alternative if there's falsification of records. FAA becomes very irritated when lied to. Obviously, this is a matter of safety, and not just FAA, but ICAO also takes, International Civil Aviation Organization also takes this very seriously. And if there's is lies or falsification in your records, if it's found, then you can always kiss your aviation career goodbye. Clearing your record, what is the only enforcement action that remains on your record forever? Revocation. Remember, file NSA, NASA reports, keep accurate records, keep abreast of changes in FARs. So that's the most important thing, keeping abreast with changes in FARs. Once again, do not succumb to the temptation to lie. What should penalty be if you get caught? The felony, no vote, no firearm, 5 years, $250,000 fine, revoke certification on emergency basis. Remember, U.S. Attorney Office prosecute these cases with vigilance. So that means, like I said earlier in the previous slide, it is not just FAA, but ICAO also follows it through really, really seriously when it comes to falsification of records. So be mindful and be thoughtful and be safe. Thank you and have a great day.